Well, Danny, obviously there's no game this weekend, so I thought rather than doing our usual pre-match, why don't we just have a bit of a chat about everything that's going on in the world and what we're doing as a club moving forwards.
Yeah, so obviously no game this weekend. So training as normal within reason. We've got some in-house stuff on Saturday instead of the fixture, and then obviously building up the preparation for the Weymouth game. Getting ready for that. To be honest, just making sure the lads staying sharp and staying positive.
And just a short note on that, how are the lads doing? They all okay with everything going forward?
Yeah, listen, it's been a tough time for a lot of players, and I mean the news that's come out of Yeovil, hence the reason why we haven't got a fixture this weekend, is just tragic. And I think that obviously there's a lot of speculation around what's actually happened, but regardless of what ends up coming out, the mental state of players at the moment, and obviously everyone involved at Yeovil, they're quite vulnerable at the minute, and it's just a tough time. And I think that we keep saying the same things over and over again. People need to wake up and sort of smell the coffee, and more needs to be done, but nothing seems to be being done about it. And whether that's the governing bodies, whether that's the clubs themselves, I don't know who needs to take the lead on that, but somebody needs to stand up and make a point and say that actually this has got to stop happening. This kind of stigma around football, stigma around men, and the fact that, you know what, you guys, what's the saying, man up. I mean, what does that even mean anymore? Like you've got groups of people now that are struggling and suffering, and they're more concerned about admitting that than they are about and getting help, than they are about potentially doing potential harm to themselves or even to the extreme. Like, and I think that's really, really sad. That's quite scary. Who wants to be brought up in a world like that? Surely humankind, you want to try and help each other out, and that's how I was brought up. And I just think that from our perspective as a club, we spoke to the players yesterday. It was quite an emotional meeting. We spoke to them, and I wanted them to know that no matter what you've done, what's happening, what's going on, nothing's that bad that you can't come and knock on my door. And even if you don't play for me anymore, pick the phone up. And the same goes for the staff at this club. We've got to have that policy where it's okay to not. I think that's the saying, isn't it? It's okay to not be okay, and you've got to be brave enough to just stand up and say, you know what, because the more people do it, the less brave people need to become, because it becomes the norm.
And particularly with football, you know, it does feel like the community, and it's a family orientated thing, whether it's friends going to a game or within a footballing environment, professional football environment. And you know, just the way the world's gone, it's just so different to the way it was a year ago. And you do start to see, especially with the way the world is, the way the mental health plays a part on people, particularly with lockdown and COVID and everything like that. It is a really difficult time for people all across the world.
I think people keep saying it's the new era and people are softer and they're not as robust or as aggressive as they used to be. I'm not so sure. I just don't think that it was ever recognised a long time ago. I don't think people had the opportunity to come out and admit that things aren't okay and that they need help. I don't think that was ever kind of there's no understanding around it. And obviously the world evolves, science moves on. There is psychology now, there is psychiatrists, there are life coaches and mentors and people that can help people. And I think that to kind of caveat that, you've now got a group of people that think it's acceptable to almost hone in on that and use your weakness or use some kind of negativity to single you out and to constantly go at you with absolutely no ramifications for those people whatsoever.
And just on that sort of note as well, I know this is something you're a big advocate of, is mental health. It's something you've spoken about personally with the year you've had as well. I know it's something that you wanted to maybe open up to people about and talk about as well.
Yeah, look, I've obviously spoken to you about it before. When I had a period out of work, and I'm not afraid to admit it, I was diagnosed clinically depressed and I was put on medication, and But I consider myself quite lucky. I've got a really loving and supporting family. I've got people around me that, if I'm honest, if it wasn't for them, I probably wouldn't have recognised it myself. And I needed to go and speak to a doctor. And to be honest with you, the first 25-30 minutes of that meeting, I didn't say a word. I just cried because I was in a terrible state. And then, obviously, thank God, touch wood, I've managed to pull myself out of that with the support of my family and my friends and football. Football supported me as well. And I think that to then, obviously, losing my dad at Christmas, losing my dad at Christmas kind of like gives you almost sets you back a bit. And I spoke to Claire the other day, and she was like, "Do you think you need to maybe get some help?" And I was like, well, I don't feel that bad at the minute. Like, I feel bad, but I feel like I'm managing it. But it's hard because every day I miss him every day, and I'm working hard to be honest about my feelings, but also to try and to do what he would want me to do, which is to crack on and carry on going. And but it's really tough, and I can't. I find it hard when people say, I know what you're going through, because obviously everyone's relationships with their parents, with their siblings, whatever, they're all different. But I understand grief, and so there's a lot of people who are going through grief at the moment for various reasons. Obviously, we've got Bob recently lost his wife, and he's managing it in his way and with his support of his family, and obviously us as the club. And I think from our perspective, it's just about, I don't know, just trying to focus on some positives and try and take the positives out of it. And I'm like, every day I get in the car, I normally car friend my dad, and I'd speak to him for 30-40 minutes on my journey home. And obviously I still go to do that, and then you have to remember, and then obviously you get upset, and then you spend a part of your journey. And it's like songs come on that you used to listen to with your dad, and it's really, really difficult. But I'm getting there. And do you know what, like, everyone around me, the people that, and this, I don't mean to sound negative, but people that matter have been massively supportive of me, and it does help. But I think the fact that I've tried to be open with how I'm feeling has helped that as well, because obviously people are more likely to put their arm around you and give you the support you need if they know that something's going on. So it's been, as I said, I promised I wouldn't get emotional, didn't I? It's been really, really hard. I think the saddest thing for me at times is seeing my mum, because she's on her own now. She's not been on 50 years. They've been together, my mum and dad, and yeah, that probably breaks my heart more than anything. But she's doing really, really well, because we're pitching in. We're all working hard together to try and see some light at the end of the tunnel. And we know that my dad would have wanted us to get on with it. I can almost hear him saying it now. So yeah, it's not been an easy year, and obviously football, the positive side of football, has been a massive help for me.
Do you think, I know this is really difficult to ask, but the way football is, and the way particularly men's football particularly possibly is, with that stigma of having to sort of, like you say, man up and sort of not talk about the way your life is and the way outside of football things are, do you think doing things like this helps you and helps other people who may be going through the same sort of situations as well? Yeah,
I'm sure there'll be people that still manage to find a negative in what I'm doing, what other people are doing, to try and promote almost like a more positive environment, because it's almost like that's their goal in life. They want to find the negative out of anything. I know there's been stuff posted about the club where loads of good stuff's happened. One little thing went wrong, and they've highlighted that, and they hone in on that. And what I try and tell myself and what I try and tell people's advice is that says more about them than it says about you. That shows where they are, and they probably need the help just as much as anyone else. If that's the frame of mind they're in, about being negative about a situation, which actually there's 99 positives, but they've managed to find the one negative. But I think that especially with football's probably the biggest financial sport in the world. When you think of the top leagues, the amount of countries that have top leagues, the amount of money earned in those top leagues, it's probably the biggest grossing sport in the world. and a bit controversial, I think we're probably the furthest behind in the sense of actual treating people like people as opposed to assets or players. And I look at the way that players get released from clubs, I look at the way that injuries affect players, I look at managers being sacked, I look at all of the things that kind of happen across the board, and the support mechanism is almost non-existent. And that's not criticising any of the governing bodies, because to have the resources to put those sort of foundations in place to support people, you need to have a collective. It needs to be a collective. But I mean, look, it's a tough environment, and the go-to for any football is, oh, it's football. You've got to just get on with it because that's acceptable. And I'm like, well, actually, no. Let's not accept it. Let's all start turning around. And this might not have any effect on it at all. But at this club, and what we're trying to do is, you know what? We're not standing for it. We want to have an environment that's a safe place for our players, a safe place for our staff, and inadvertently a safe place for our supporters, sponsors, everything. This is a club of positivity, and we're not gonna allow the minority to drag us down because they think it's acceptable to do so.
And Danny, obviously with the power and the emphasis that social media has within football and life at the minute, it's interesting to see how it could be used both for positive and negatives.
It's probably the most powerful thing out there at the minute, because it has the capability to build someone up, give everyone a great appreciation, and then within one swoop can knock you completely out. To be honest, it's quite a dangerous thing, and especially with the lack of monitoring on it, because people can do what they want. They can write what they want, they can say what they want with very limited ramifications or any consequences.
Exactly that, and there's been a lot of speculation of whether social media channels and accounts should do more of making sure those anonymous accounts are dealt with and aren't able to post stuff that's negative on there, but at the same time it's difficult because it's people's privacy and things like that.
But, well, I think we're all fortunate to live in a world where freedom of speech seems to be the norm, and people are allowed to have an opinion, and people are allowed to voice their concerns, their praise, whatever they want to do. But there has to be a line that can't be crossed, and for me, the monitoring of social media is a relatively simple one. You can't have an account unless you can give actual identification. Each individual is only allowed one account per social media outlet, and that has to be done with verification of identification. And then if you have a company or a business, you have to have proof that that's your company or business. And because if we wanted to, me and you now could sit here, make up 20 email addresses and set up 20 Instagram, Twitter, Snapchat, whatever you want to do, YouTube, we could make out any channel we wanted and write what we want, and they won't find you and they're not going to come after you, and you have carte blanche. And it's unacceptable, because especially in football, because the reason I say that is because, and probably anyone who's in the spotlight from a celebrity perspective, because we're supposed to accept it because we're in the public eye. Now I'm a manager of a National League football club, so I probably don't get even 1% of what some of the top end footballers and managers and people get. But even some of the stuff that I'm sent, and I sit there sometimes and I think, most of the time you just brush it off, but you think, who gives you the right to do that? To purposely go out of your way to find someone's account and, there's the word's troll, isn't it? And troll them with abuse and just vulgar language. And we're supposed to accept it because we're in the public eye. That's part of the course. You've got to just accept that. It's not acceptable. It's not acceptable, and it's cowardly. People are cowards. They go on here. You're allowed an opinion. If you don't think, I don't know, if you don't think that a player played well or a game went well, I think if you want to tweet, oh, I thought so-and-so didn't perform very well today. Why do you need to be abusive? Why do you need to make it a personal thing? I don't think that is acceptable at all. I think it's disgusting. And imagine if we started going around and picking up, let's use our fans for example, and started saying, oh, one of them's a plumber, and then going, oh, I've heard you're plumbing, and then just constantly going at them. We'd be raked over the coals for that, because you can't do that. You're a public figure. You can't be talking. But yet we're supposed to accept it as players. I mean, one of our players has received a letter today from an opposition fan this week, cut out in newspaper, and an abusive message sent to him. Now, he's laughed it off. In what world do we live in where that is acceptable for someone to go out of their way to do that and abuse someone? And when we talk about mental health and people's fragility mentally, I just don't understand it. I don't understand it. And they seem to think it's acceptable that they can write what they want. And then if you block them, oh, you're a snowflake, you're weak. Because, well, hold on a minute, if you're apparently entitled to say what you want to say about me or a player or another manager or a club, well then I have the right to not listen to it. And I'm not going to. If you want to write abusive stuff about me, that's fine. If you want to do that, I don't agree with it. I think you shouldn't be allowed to do it. I think I will report you and I will block you because I don't want to listen to it. I don't want to surround myself with that.
And we're having this conversation obviously with the attention that mental health is being brought to now with everything that's gone on recently. As a club, what's the future plans and events and goals for us to make sure mental health is both looked after and, everything else?
Well, you know what? And again, I've been criticised for being Mr. Positive, and do you know what? I'm not going to see that as a criticism. I'm going to take that as a positive. So, along with yourself, we're going to break the stigma. We're going to change that. I know some clubs have gone with a social media ban. They're like, we're not going to go on social media. I'm not sure how much weight that holds. For me, we're going to go the other way, and we're going to pay tribute to our fellow football clubs. We're going to pay tribute to some of our fondest memories of football, because football is an amazing environment, and hopefully, one, other clubs will follow suit, and two, other industries and other environments will follow suit. And you know what? Actually, let's put a nice message out there as a football club, and we're going to launch an initiative called Shot of Positivity, and hopefully people will buy into that. And I'm sure there'll be some that will criticise it, and you will be blocked, and because we don't want to hear it. And
it's not that. It's exactly that. We're not, like you say, trying to be Mr. Positive, but it's in a world where everything seems to be difficult and mental health is becoming more and more of an issue. Not an issue, but something that needs to be addressed and sorted and made sure it's well looked after, particularly with the recent events that are going on.
We live in a country, and I don't follow lots of social media from other countries. I get a gist of it, and it seems to be the same. But I'll speak about our country. We live in a country where you can do 99 out of 100 things really, really well, and nobody makes a comment. If you do one thing wrong, everybody jumps on it and wants to talk about that. And I think even our own club, for example, from what I've been told, if we win, hardly nothing's posted on any of our social media. If we lose, everybody comes out because they want to talk about it. And I feel quite sad for that. I think that's quite a sad world to live in, isn't it? Because we won't celebrate our successes, but we'll jump all over our negativity and our defeats and our losses. And as I said, it's not about not having criticism, because I think that's unfortunately a part of life. You're going to have criticism at times, but when it becomes a personal attack, when people are talking about you as a person and sort of disrespecting everything that you stand for and everything you work for every day. Everybody at this football club and every football club work unbelievably hard, especially at the minute because of the current circumstances. And then if you go outside of that, NHS frontline workers, all these people are working unbelievably hard. But you even see it in our press. One thing happens, or one thing goes wrong, or someone's experience of going to get a vaccine wasn't great, or someone's experience of the whole thing, all of the good work that everyone's done is negated because of this one incident, and that's an environment we live in. And for me, that's got to change. If you want to talk about generational changes and all of this kind of stuff, the mentality around that needs to change, because there's a reason why suicide rates are what they are. There's a reason why young men are going to kill themselves because they're falling behind at school, because of the pressures and the environment you're in, because the negativity around that one negative thing that happens in their life is so magnified that it negates anything positive in their life, and that is not right. And until that stops, people like me and hopefully all the others out there who want to try and make a difference, we're not going to stop either. And if we have to go head to head with people, we will.
And thank you for speaking so openly today, Danny. Hopefully this message gets across to the right people.
No, thanks. I appreciate your time, Emma. Thank you.
Are you in with a shot? More information below. Click here for the next video, click here to subscribe.